Welcome. This is a presentation for the Mannion Clan 2022 gathering and for the Mannion Surname Project. This presentation is part of the 2022 Mannion Clan gathering and will be a discussion based upon the Mannion Clan members who have done a DNA test. Hopefully this will interest those who have Mannion ancestry, have done a DNA test, or might do a DNA test. The presentation focuses on the results from those with Mannion ancestry that have joined the Mannion Surname Project at Family Tree DNA. If you haven't joined the project, please do so, and we'll be more about that coming up. So this presentation was prepared by Jim Hollarn, myself, who's the admin of the Mannion Surname Project, also an admin for the Mannion Genealogy and DNA Facebook group, and I guess I am responsible for its content. A good number of Mannion with Mannion ancestry have chosen to do both a family tree and an ancestry DNA test to learn more. Besides doing a DNA test, building your family tree is great. The companies that provide the greatest insight are the ones that provide matches, ethnicity, and tools. They do not all provide the same results, tools, and features. Each company below has its own pros and cons, and that won't be entirely discussed here. So there's Ancestry, MyHeritage, 23andMe, Living DNA, and of course Family Tree DNA, of which the Mannion Surname Project is there. And here is the link to a choice link for choosing a DNA testing company. Obviously I play my favorites, but I recommend if you're just starting out with Ancestry testing, do the Ancestry.com test and then transfer your results to Family Tree DNA for free. The other companies can do that as well. So if you need background on DNA and unfamiliar with DNA testing for Ancestry, and you'd like a refresher, I'm suggesting the link to the presentation below by Dr. Maurice Gleason. While I'll cover some of the fundamentals of DNA and testing, you might benefit from his presentation in further understanding the fundamentals of DNA and how it can be used to further inform you about your genealogy, recent and in the distant past. And here's the link below. Although his presentation was done in 2015, there have been some changes, but the essences remain the same. So I borrowed this slide from Dr. Maurice Gleason, which describes the three types of DNA tests. Most of the test companies are doing autosomal DNA, which is good for about 4 to 6 generations, to looking at as far back as 64 double great-grandparents. But Y-DNA is another test which follows the paternal line only. So while the Y-DNA might be very small, significant amount of information can be derived from that and trace paternal ancestry many generations. The same is the case for mitochondrial DNA, which will trace deep and recent ancestry, but is of limited use for genealogy. Sometimes it can be helpful. More about that later. So what about the Mannion Surname Project? Well, the Mannion is one of over 11,000 DNA projects. And there are about 252 new projects since 2020. So more are added all the time. Just recently we've added the Connemara Galway Geographic Project, and we're finding that helpful for integrating different family names who have done different DNA testing. So Family Tree DNA projects are organized by surnames, geography, and by DNA haplotypes. Members can join multiple projects that fit their interests and the results desired. And projects are organized to identify common ancestry through DNA results in support of the members. Project administration is done by volunteers for the benefit of participants, of which the Mannion Surname Project has several. The Mannion Surname Project or Family Tree DNA was chosen because it provides the tests, the structure, and the tools to best support surname research with company and volunteer support. Family Tree DNA provides the ability to test 3 types of inherited DNA. The Y-DNA, which is inherited by men only, the autosomal DNA, which is inherited by both men and female back to several generations, and then a mitochondrial DNA, which is inherited by male and female, which follows the mother line, but only females can pass that DNA down to its descendants, to her descendants. So this presentation, again, is focused on those who have tested or transferred their DNA to family tree DNA. Again, the Mannion Surname Project update is not to tell or inform you about human DNA, but to tell anyone or to tell how to do your ancestry or DNA research, is to provide an overview and an update on the state and the progress of results in the project. As of August 2022, the Mannion Surname Project is 6 years old, so great progress has been made for the Mannion descendants to confirm and reveal more about their personal ancestry and to identify genetic relatives. Here is a summary of what is the current progress in joining the Surname Project, starting out pretty small back in 2016, and we're now up to 315 members. To join the project requires a DNA test, and family tree DNA is tested for autosomal Y DNA or mitochondrial DNA. It doesn't matter which test you use. However, I'd certainly going to recommend autosomal DNA as a start for family research, close family research, and Y DNA, which has got robust tools, and much more can be done with it for paternal ancestry. Only men can take that test. So transfer of autosomal DNA data is possible from Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, MyHeritage, to Family Tree DNA to discover new matches for free. The following result files can be transferred. This may be changed since I've created this graphic some time ago, but generally now all tests can be transferred to Family Tree DNA for free. Either by ordering a test or by a transfer, new members can join the Mannion Surname Project, and others if desired, for example, another surname in your family. Here's a link to the public page for a discussion or an overview of the Mannion Surname Project. It includes not only the overview but some background. Don't pay too much attention to the goals, news, and results and project statistics at this point, but you can actually review some of the DNA results from this page link on the left-hand column. So kind of an outline of further discussion here today would be the tests and results for members. For Y DNA results, we have 136 men that have tested. 34 of these are big Y. For autosomal DNA, Family Finder results, which Family Tree calls Family Finder, 125 results are available. And then your own personal matches are certainly more numerous than that, but just individuals. In mitochondrial DNA, 55 people have chosen that to do that test. So I'd like to also include making the most of your DNA and emphasize by adding your family tree. It's incredibly good recommendation to do that. So further recommendations at the end of the talk. So in Mannion Y DNA, the project can only provide results to those who have tested and joined the project. There are many more Mannion men who might test, and that would further our understanding of how members are related to each other and their branch within the Mannion clan. And Y DNA is giving us a better understanding of the medieval period, clan membership, and interconnectivity. So one of the things that we classify Y DNA is through haplogroups. So just to give you an understanding of that, a haplogroup is a genetic population group of people who share a common ancestor on either their paternal or maternal line. So there are Y ancestral haplogroups, and there are mitochondrial maternal haplogroups. Among the Mannion Y DNA ancestral haplogroups, it's principally Y and their subclades and haplogroup I. So the evolution of migration out of Africa includes quite a numerous number of haplogroups as mutations occurred over time, over thousands of years. And you can see from this graphic, for us, principal interest are those who have migrated over towards Europe, Ireland, Scandinavia. So among the DNA branches, DNA mutations occur over time, which results in retraceable branches. Y DNA follows the paternal father-to-father genetic lines back for centuries, regardless of the surname held. And in medieval times, Dr. Joe Mannion's and others' research indicates that Fergus was the first Sogan king to adopt the Mannion or Mannion surname, and we can only estimate his haplogroup, although I might have an estimate. While many joined the clan or inherited the Mannion or Mannion surname, we cannot trace all Mannion back to the same progenitor. While Mannions with the same genetic Y signature can be estimated back to a common ancestor, it's not possible to identify every generation, but the connecting branches can be determined. That is, we can't fill in the names between genealogy records and older Y DNA connections. So DNA results cannot determine when any branch or Y haplogroup may have joined the Mannion clan, and we may not be able to estimate when any ancestor adopted the Mannion surname. So here's an overview of the Mannion haplogroups and subclades, and you can see from this graphic the large blue portion of the pie chart, which indicates that we are at a state now where roughly 39% of all the Mannion or Mannions in disguise by Manning are M222. That's indicated as a representative group of descendants of Niall of the Nine Hostages. The other groups will be described a little bit more. So for M269 essentially is almost all those people from Western Europe that migrated west. And you can see that goes back to about 4400 BC. So continuing my mutations since then have resulted in many other different groups, and one that's very much of interest to us is this Nile M222 signature, where it traces back to roughly 100-200 BC, and it's the largest member group within the Mannion Y DNA results. It's been associated with the Nile of the Nine Hostages and his kin, and a large number of other surnames were adopted by his or their descendants. There are 27 members who descend from M222 in the project, and they are in 7 more lower branches. So most have tested in the primary group to another SNP, FTG 5939. So if you see these SNPs, they actually represent a person whose name is unknown, how they were called at the time, maybe even before given names or nicknames, but we don't know that. And a few of these have tested for big Y, which gives us the most granular portion of DNA results. So the public results here are given in a graphic, and they're separated into different lineages based upon family groupings. So members are placed in a lineage grouping based upon how closely the members match. The SDRs are used for initial grouping, followed by SNP testing, single nucleotide polymorphisms, for refinements. Both SDRs and SNPs are used for the most common recent ancestor estimates. And those people who have tested only to M269, that very ancient ancestor, need more SDRs or SNP tests to be able to better group. Additional Y DNA branches within the Mannion clan include L1308. Peter Mannion is a member of that grouping. His test results indicate we can identify that he shared a common ancestor back in 600 AD with others who had that SNP. And they generally carry this Western Atlantic modal haplogroup badge. So 11 members are part of this group. There are 3 branches within that, with 9 members who are more closely related. Another grouping of interest is the CTS 3655 ancestor group, and that goes back to roughly 1150 AD. There's 14 members in that group. Some are more closely related to each other, but they all grew back to that about time frame. Some of these members bear the Manning surname, and a few of those being of County Kerry. CTS 4466 goes back to about 250 AD to a common ancestor. There's 6 members there. Most appear to be the Mannion surname, and these are attributed to descendants of Brian Boru. So they may or may not be true Mannions, but they have decided to join the Mannion Surname Project, and I've tried to group them based upon their results. There's a number of others who are only stuck at M269. There is insufficient DNA testing and matches to define which branch they belong to, and there's roughly 10 members that belong in that grouping that can't yet be found. So here's these additional lineages. You can see different people who I can't identify by name for privacy purposes, but who have identified their most distant ancestor. And you can see a lot of people are still at M269, but sometimes I can look at who they match and how those people have tested in order to further group them, but confirmation would require SNP testing. That can be seen on the Mannion Tree DNA public pages. So autosomal DNA is what's called by Family Tree DNA Family Finder. Autosomal DNA results are derived from our 22 autosomes, and then the 23rd is the sex chromosome, so an X for the female, double X, or the male Y and an X chromosome to identify the sex of the tester. But it doesn't go any more granular on the X and Y chromosome than that. But X chromosome results can be obtained from family tree DNA, not necessarily displayed on all the other companies. And that can be helpful because it has a particular path of inheritance through the female mother line of both men and female, both men and women. So autosomal DNA provides genetic matches who share a traceable amount of DNA to common ancestors to about 4 to 6 generations. At 6 generations, the dilution because of recombination effects are sometimes insufficient to identify who that ancestor is, or it might be an ancestral couple. But back to about 4 generations, generally you can pretty much identify that family line to which that DNA you inherit comes from. And of course those matches are compared by the amount of shared DNA with that other person. So being able to identify a common ancestor is best accomplished by combining your genealogy, that is your family tree, and the shared DNA. Autosomal DNA comparisons are used by models from population groups to estimate ancestry percentages. So these are things like what ethnicity do you have? Each company has its own population model by which your SNPs, your DNA is compared, and then those percentages are published. So they will vary between one company and another. Most people like the ancestry results. It might be... I'm recording my talk. I've got to do it later. Call you later. So that was nice. I just got a call from Peter Mannion and Noel Murphy, who were in the audience today. So most of the 258 project members, of which 241 have tested their autosomal DNA. If you saw an earlier statistic in this talk, it's because this slide has been updated. 136 Family Finder members have tested a family tree DNA, and 150 or 105 or autosomal DNA transfers have come in from Ancestry, MyHeritage, or 23andMe. The free transfer has been very successful in getting Mannion Project members to aid members of Mannion Clan research. An example of mixed heritage and ethnicity from autosomal DNA. This is an example for myself who have mixed heritage, and it's a heat map that shows where the domain around which my DNA was inherited. My mother's side is where that Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania ancestry comes from Poland, and for maybe some other Slavic countries. So that's kind of in common with other people who have DNA from that origin. Then you can see Ireland is pretty much where my 23% of my DNA comes from. Earlier estimates, because of the difficulty of separating out Irish in the United Kingdom, or portions of Scotland, Wales, and England, were difficult to separate out. My current estimate has done that. It might be kind of boring to see something like this, which is another example from one of our autosomal DNA testers in the Mannion Surname Project, where it shows no other European ancestry comparisons with his matches, and that indicates that coverage from Ireland, as well as including the area of United Kingdom on this map, and that may again be largely because of his ancestors have migrated to England and have been tested there. I've provided a kind of a snapshot of the results for a tester, which indicates, in this case, only a modicum of relationship, second or third cousin or more, based upon the amount of centimorgans shared and what the largest block of centimorgans is shown in the second column. And so their given name has been removed, blacked out, and you can see in this case there's quite a number of surnames involved. That may be because, particularly the females, have shown their test results with their married name as opposed to their maiden name, and you can see this has been blacked out of the photographs of the person so they wouldn't be recognized. But it does show in the right hand column their surname origins, the names of their surname and maybe where they are from, and your results would be very much complete, and Peter and Noel may be able to show you some more detailed results for that, or you can contact me for more of that result or to review your own results. So 220 members tested, 49 have Mannion, or 17 with the Mannion with one N surname. We have 29 that have the Manning surname, some of which are Mannions, and 125 various surnames genetically related to Mannion or Manning, probably through marriages, or because the married name is there and I don't know what their family name is. So personal results are received will include ethnic and geographic origin and genetic matches. This often confirms or discovers new DNA relatives, maybe beyond what you knew from your local family tree or research. So I would remind you that a narrow pedigree chart limits opportunities to understand these. Expanding your tree to include descendants of your great-grandparents to your kit provides an optimum chance to determine how you're related to more of your matches. Getting a known relative to test will further help determine how you are related to your matches by sorting your results. Ideally, that would be testing your parents, and lacking that opportunity, to test aunts, uncles, primarily second cousins. First cousins are still valuable, and I've tested some of those, as have many other members. And if you can, test siblings. There's another thing that will be kind of a follow-on presentation to GetMatch, where if you can test 3 siblings, you might be able to create a test that's valuable for representing your parents. Testing descendants of your great-grandparents could be a big help understanding additional family branches. So moving on to mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial are structures within a cell that convert energy from food into a form that cells can use. And there's also some other things that we don't quite know that much about within the cell, but known as mitochondrial DNA. And in humans, the mitochondrial DNA spans about 16,500 DNA building blocks or base pairs, representing a small fraction of the 6 billion base pairs in your DNA, of which we only use for DNA testing either a limited number for Y, a limited number for mitochondrial DNA, and about 700,000 or less for SNPs for autosomal DNA, but that's sufficient for matching and doing ancestry research. The other cells do other functions. They include genes that may or may not have health factors related to them. So mitochondrial DNA follows, again, the mother line exclusively. Mitochondrial DNA, as it's often abbreviated, was the first ancestral DNA identified and traceable. I think maybe one of the lead researchers in the public domain for that was National Geographic. But I do not generally recommend mitochondrial DNA testing without research and or consulting a genetic genealogist. You can feel free to consult me. There are some other options to enhance an understanding of the maternal line, possibly to test your mother's brother or a nephew, male nephew, or an uncle on that maternal side. That might be more beneficial. And if it's in a case of unknown parentage, it could be that in that case, mtDNA would be helpful. So here's a map of the mitochondrial DNA migration through time. You can see all the way into South America, across through the Bering Strait, out of the Middle East initially for B, C, and D, and even for that matter a bit of X. So we're primarily interested in what's going on in Western Europe, and it turns out that most of the Irish testers have haplogroup, mitochondrial haplogroup H and U, and secondarily V. And if you have V mitochondrial haplogroup, that might be actually an indicator of some potential Viking ancestry. So here are the percentage groups, and you can see that 45% of the current testers within the Mannion Surname Project have haplogroup H. And there are several branches within this, and you would have to go to the website to see in the public results a breakdown of those different H types. It could be H1, it could be H6, it could be H24. So, and they all have some origins which I've adopted from Upedia, where you can find out more detail. So U is the second most common, and V, which I thought would be more common within the Irish of Mannion Surname Project, actually only represent about 4%. So 25 members have haplogroup H, U 9, haplogroup K, which is another group that kind of surprises me when I look at it in terms of numbers, is there. Haplogroup J, some people misinterpret as meaning it's Jewish, but it's only representative of Middle East origins, of which many of these haplogroups descend from anyway. So you want to see the project and the Upedia for more information on these haplogroups. Again, 55 members have the mitochondrial DNA test. 4 of the Mannions are in that H1A, H2, H27, and 9 Manning surnames are in the H3, HV, U4, UB, U5, U8. But 33 various surnames have other heritage in various mitochondrial groups. So they may be helpful for your genealogy, but it's an expensive test, and I'd look for other alternatives, including whether a close relative has maybe already tested their mitochondrial DNA that you might be able to leverage from that. So I believe that specialized use and interpretation is required. It can be really helpful for adoptees or someone with an unknown mother. Certainly in the case of DOEs, people who have whose remains have been discovered and they don't know either the sex or the origins, mitochondrial DNA would be useful. So if used, it should be done along with other tests. I wouldn't test mitochondrial DNA alone if you're looking for your maternal history. So there's 14 groups, 7 different haplogroups currently reflect mitochondrial results. A more current status of that could be seen on the project public results pages. So your family tree and family tree DNA, the Mannion Project includes or provides for adding your family tree to your family tree DNA kit. You should normally use your GEDCOM downloaded from your software such as Ancestry, which is most common, and that will be automatically loaded. All you have to do is identify who you are in the GEDCOM, and it'll only populate that tree with who is genetically related to you. Accessory branches or collateral branches of your tree will not be included, so it's really pared down to those that are most useful for understanding your DNA results. The other thing is in the genealogy tab, you want to add your most distant paternal and maternal ancestor and their location. Those are quite helpful to someone like myself or yourself for understanding your results. Ancestral surnames is another thing. You know, you've got a lot of generations with different surnames in it, and if you add those in, it might be a quick key to help you identify your matches, or for your or people who match you or looking at your results to say, oh yes, I recognize they have a Joyce in their family tree and I do. Maybe that's how we're related in common with each other. So a good family tree will help you understand your relationship to your DNA matches, and for your matches to recognize a connection to your family. Also, add tested relatives to your family tree DNA. When you can link them, you can sort your autosomal DNA matches, where it'll give you a list of those paternal related matches and those who are maternal lines with the family tree DNA linking tool. If you've tested siblings, then you're doubly related through them. But you're primarily looking to simplify your list, so you know who is really related through your father's side and who's really related through your mother's side, and you can focus on that. So their privacy provisions are provided, and living people are not shared, with additional restrictions for privacy if needed. I recommend sharing your family tree with your matches. You don't necessarily need to share it with the world, but keeping your family tree private limits what others and yourself, not so much what you can do, but limits what others might do to help you out. So here is another case of where I've done some research on the Mannions, and I've done this research from the 1901 and 1911 census. Here's my map for the 1911 Mannion heads of household and where they're located, and then what I've done as well is tried to build where I've done family trees of my own, hosted by myself at Ancestry.com. So I'm sure there are many more people that have done a family tree, but what I'm looking for by building these family trees is to see if I can find living descendants and how I might be able to trace them and encourage them to do a DNA test, so we might better understand these connections between currently living people and their ancestral background. And what I'm using for this are the census records from 1901 and 1911, the baptismal records for parishes that had started these records, generally few before 1850 and very, very rare to find some before 1800, and then through civil records, Protestants since 1846, and for Catholics since 1864. There's records for birth, marriages, and deaths, and I've tried to integrate any of those that might apply to one of those blue dots in looking at their ancestry, and I would advise that some of those trees aren't as well built out as others. I'd love to do more. I'd love to be able to see more of your family trees attached to your kits, and so please consider that. Don't worry about those stars down there. They are not Mannions. There are other things that I've flagged on my Google. Here, my recommendations. Certainly join the Mannion Surname Project and any others that are appropriate. If you want to join the Connemara Project, if you're from West Galway, please do. There's Maine Gill Talk. There's, if you're a Sullivan, if you're a Joyce, if you're a Keneally, if you're a Nee, there are surname projects for those, some of which I am in. So, in particular for Mannions, I'm really hopeful that more male Mannions will do Y testing. That's going to help us further understand the connection to paternal ancestors for yourself and help to describe a recent and medieval period branches since the clan was formed, even before. And do an autosomal DNA test to determine genetic relatives to increase your understanding of your more recent ancestry. If you do a Y37 test, it's a great start. Some of you may be still a little puzzled as to, well, what am I going to get for this? With Y37 for a male, you're going to get your list of matches, but we're finding out that there are some certain shortcomings in that. You're going to get a list of surnames you don't recognize, and we usually have to do an upgrade to additional SDRs to sort out those that are much more closely related to you. But if you can afford it, the biggest thing you can do for your Y DNA is do a big Y. Then you get down to your own personal SNPs, It'll identify all your mutations between yourself, going back to the earliest Y DNA branch that exists. And then from that, we can determine how closely you are related to your matches. You'll have your own unique identifier, family identifier. For some of the Mannions, we do have that unique identifier on the Y DNA results. You can see in the Mannion DNA results. For the Hollarns, we have another test group where we can identify, if I could just see a few of your matches, I can tell you exactly what SNP you need to test for, or what your results for improvement will be from a big Y. Again, I'm recommending only order the mitochondrial DNA after research and consulting about alternatives to answer your genealogy questions. Please build your family tree and share it. If you need help with your building your family tree, please get a hold of me or one of the admins for some help on that. They can guide you, and generally you can do a lot for free or with some alternative software initially, including the family search site, but you can't export your tree very easily from there. And ask for advice or questions from your project admins. So, as far as project administration, I follow the guidelines for privacy and for genealogy ethics. I'm your principal volunteer for the Mannion clan. My supporting volunteer co-admins are Dr. Joe Mannion, who has encouraged me significantly to do the kind of research I've been doing for all of us on Mannion. John Mira in Australia doesn't really have a whole lot of time to help us out, but he's out there as well, especially if you have Australian connections, he might be a further help. Peter Mannion. Susan Nelson has again been very helpful in trying to identify her ancestors. He's trying to follow and identify her James Mannion that came from East Galway, and we're trying to further locate what townland he might be from, and Noel Murphy. So please feel free to contact us for assistance and recommendations. On the Mannion Clan webpage at Family Tree DNA, you should be able to find our emails and certainly my own. I extend my thank you for being a part of the Mannion clan and the biggest Mannion family tree. I thank you for your patience with this presentation. I've had some hardware and software issues, so maybe a little disjointed, especially within trying to get this audio presentation together. But I hope by being a member of the Mannion Surname Project and the Mannion Clan Genealogy and DNA Facebook group, which would have to be another point of discussion, I hope I provide some benefits to its members. And a plug, if you will, for the summer sale. Other companies may have had a summer sale still available, but the Family Tree DNA site has a summer sale on. Get some reasonable discounts for these different tests. Y37 for men. The autosomal DNA Family Finder, $49. But Y37 for men is a great place to start. Either one, men or women, for Family Finder for $49, and you can join the Mannion Surname Project from there. Again, if you have tested elsewhere, or you go ahead and tested Ancestry because you like to see their Ancestry origin results, go ahead and do that, but then do that free transfer afterwards. If you've already done a partial test, you've done Y37, and you want to consider an upgrade, discounts are also available for those. And again, free transfers if you've already tested. So, thank you. If you haven't tested or joined the Mannion Project, please do so. Thank you for your attention. For questions or additional information, you can contact me at my email. And if you're at the clan gathering, I think you can get some support from Noel Murphy and from Peter Mannion. And I'll end the discussion here.